Pakyuke tukdan dageyi Tünyerme çıktı çingelo Makyuke kudan dagelu Dage nga Makyuke tukdan dage Tünyerme çıktı çingelo Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Munye Svoha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Om Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Svoha Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonamla Chanchu Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonamki Drola Pinchra Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonamla Chanchu Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonamki Drola Pinchra Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonamla Chanchu Pardo Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonamki Drola Pinchra Sangye Drupar Sho.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit.
Namo ya lhaye ke dan ludan nue chin ke drubundan da mi ke nam dam druwa kunge dranam che tsamba tam che ke to da ge che ten. Buonasera. È una gioia essere oggi qui, dopo di qualche settimana, qualcosina di più. Io ho una memoria temporale molto scarsa, come ho già detto tante volte, quindi se mi chiedete quante settimane sono passate, quando era l'ultima volta che eravamo insieme qua, non mi ricordo. Quando è stato? Maggio.
Last time I was here was maybe May, June. Please remind me.
Nel senso che io, questa è una cosa che ho imparato.
So this is something I learned when I arrived in the beginning in Italy. I had this idea of organizing everything and doing the programs. I will do this, I will do that. And at a certain point, I realized that even if I programmed everything, everything went differently. And so for this reason, I said, okay, so in order for the programs to go as I expect them to, my expectation is that I do not know what will happen. So at this point, I relax. But I realized that, and it happened that when I said I want to do this, I used to do the complete opposite. At the beginning of this year, I said, I don't want to travel. This year, I want to stay here. Since June of last year, I wanted to stay here and not travel. And it's been a disaster this year. Of course, everything is good, but I had to go to the USA 4 times. Recently now for 4 days. The last time was a record because I came from here to Canada, then 1 day in Vermont, 1 day in Canada, then I came back, and when I was there I did a lot of kilometers, 1,000 kilometers when I was there, but many good things. So for now it's okay. So in this period of time many things happened. Even if we live in a very strange period of time. We came back from Mongolia, very nice. We encountered people, and people knew better than us what was going on in that travel, in the sense that we have this strange idea that because we saw pictures, we have an idea and we already know things. And it takes away some sort of curiosity. So this is why I had this idea that a next travel, there will be some rules that I would like to put. One rule will be no phones. The second, let's bring some photographic machines with not digitals. And when it ended, the travel, when you come back, you make them print, and we can share these pictures with other people with who was not there, and in this way the experience will last longer. Otherwise it seems that as soon as it ends it's finished because everybody already knows everything. But in all these months, apart from what happened, there is some inner experiences that happened. Traditionally, when a Lama master writes his biography, there are 3 types of biographies. There is the external biography, which is the one that is known. It's the one where you write what you did, who you met, etc., etc. Then there is the inner biography, that is like how the Lama or the master lived what they lived. So the emotions, the thoughts, etc. The inner experience. And then there is the secret one, which is a part of the inner experiences that cannot be made public until one is in life. So it's about realizations and things that if it's known when someone is in life, then there is this risk of nurturing one's ego. So it's very important for us in all the experiences that we do, as long as while we are living them, trying to have these 3 levels. What I am doing externally, what I'm living internally, so how I'm living it internally. So trying to recap these months. For example, why the May of June I was not here is because I was doing the book. So now I'm remembering it was the 4th of June that we did the presentation of the book here, and then I started. And then I started every day in a different city in Italy until the 25th of June or something like that. And then it started the period of birthdays in Albagnano, etc., etc. And then we left for Mongolia. And in this period, many experiences occurred. But when I live a specific moment, what I do for myself, and I invite you to do it as well, is try to, how can I say, the conclusion of an experience, not only what I lived, but what I learned from what I lived. So innerly, how you lived it. Because you have to remember something. When we live something, when we experience something, when that moment ends, when that experience ends, it's very important for us to repeat to ourselves what happened. For example, it's important to sleep well, to have a profound sleep, because during that sleep, we go to reinforce the long-term memories. So when we live something and we tell it to someone else, this will help us in the future to remember it. So when we live something and when we finish it, we enter in another experience and we don't even tell it, we don't even share it, and we don't even sleep well, we will probably not remember it in the future. And if we do, it will be so vague. So it's important to sleep well. It has a double function, primarily. One is during our sleep, when we are dreaming, consciously or not, we go reviewing what we lived. And that stabilizes in our long-term memory, and this will help us in the future to remember it. And then, when we have a more profound sleep, there's a job of inner cleansing, like physical. During our day, we accumulate toxins in our brain, and when we sleep, it kind of cleanses it, cleaning these toxins in our brain. And the function that comes with it is to help us elaborate our emotions that we lived during the day. So if someone does not sleep profoundly, we do not cleanse these toxins and we're not able to elaborate these emotions. So this is one of the most important things of sleeping well. So I don't want to put nobody in a bad position, but what a friend, a psychiatrist, told me is that the majority of medicines to sleep don't allow the people to go in a profound sleep, in a deep sleep. So what happens is we sleep, but actually we wake up already tired because we're not able to enter in this phase of deep cleansing and re-elaborating these emotions, etc., etc. But not only this, not only sleeping well is fundamental, is important, but is important for us also to share to ourselves, so to create our own narrative of our life, because at the end of the day, we are unable to live the present independently from our past. And our story, or better yet, what we remember of what is our story, our version, because every one of us have our own version of what is happening, of what we lived, etc., etc. But what is my narrative of who I am, of who I was, what happened, etc., etc., will determine the way I will live the present and future moment. Okay? So this is why more I will complain of what was not good, the more I will make this memory reinforced in my memory. So the importance of sharing and telling, having this process of fixating and putting some marks in our long-term memory. And this happens while we tell to ourselves and to others what we live, whether it is by speech or by writing or whatever. We are creating the narration of our story, of who we are, of what we lived, etc., etc. Okay? So in this process of building this narrative, there are different aspects. There is one aspect of what I did. So I went here, there, in that city. I saw this person, that person. I ate this. I slept that way. What I did. There is a part of the external reality, so the external biography, let's say, and more or less everybody can share it. So we can have different views, but it's kind of a shared experience, and it's okay. And it's important in part for us to remember it. For example, part of this reality that is in my experience is non-existent is the dates. So what day was it when this happened? Really, if you ask me, when did this happen, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, usually I cannot say it, because personally I don't have a a good memory with dates, and this probably because I don't give importance to this. So not having a good relationship with dates, time, etc. Also, if you ask me what day is it today, I don't know. I should stop and look at it because I don't know. So what happens naturally, how can I remember something that I don't understand? It's not possible. So there is this external reality, in part important for us to remember, put emphasis in what we want to fix in our story. And then there is our inner story, inner memory, what we lived, how we lived it, how it was. And in order to do this, while we are living our different conditions and of life, in some way, there's not only what's happening outside, but our inner perception. And it's important for us allow ourselves to have the space to observe ourselves. This is fundamental, because if we don't allow ourselves to have this space to observe what we are feeling, what is happening inside of us, how I'm living it, we will not be able to remember what happened, like the dates for me, for example. Okay? So it's important for us to observe this. I make an example now. During this process of this tour of the book, externally what happened? Okay, I wrote a book, I went to present the book in different parts of Italy, etc., etc. One of the inner experiences, there were many, but one was that observing myself in the process of writing the book, I tried to summarize. What I observe is what allowed myself to do things without being too worried. So being able to be in front of many people, to speak in public or things like this. And the same was for the book. When you write a book, you expose yourself. So it was something that I learned since I was very, very young that helps me very much. I will say it with the wrong terminology, but is don't really care about what people think of me. You understand what I'm trying to say. It's not the right way of saying it, but let's say that this is not caring of the other person. But it's like saying, I can offer what I can offer, if either people like it or not. It's not my problem. Because I cannot offer more than the best that what I can offer without having this feeling of expectation of being the best. But I'm here to offer. That's it. And this is one of the things that in this process I had to take again in my own hands, because, for example, being here in front of you for me is something very natural. I don't even have to think about it. But writing for me and presenting something written for me is something that was not so spontaneous. So somewhere this click that allowed me to do it in a relaxed way was to say, okay, I'm here to offer the best that I have to offer. What I can learn in the way I will learn, where I can improve and I will do, but I'm here to offer the best that I have. So this what means is someone will like it and someone will not like it. This is normal. So if I start with this expectation that everybody needs to like it, and if I have this expectation that I need to have some recognition or approval, we enter is in dynamic where what we do it in order to have this approval. And it's very interesting. For example, to me, I always liked being criticized, because when someone criticizes us, my experience is when someone is criticizing me, they are putting me in the position of, first of all, be really honest with myself. Because our first tendency in front of a critique is being in a defensive mode and trying to counterattack it, saying no. But let's really see, does this have sense or no? Okay, it has. Okay, thank you, I learned something. If it doesn't, then okay, I reinforce what I already believed, and okay, everything is okay. But the times I found myself in front of a critic, the thing I liked most is to see how somewhere there is this attachment that comes up until you relax. And you can accept this critique in order to grow. So if you point your finger to something that I look in myself and I see, okay, you are right, means I'm learning something and I can change. And if you do it, but I don't really think it's true what you're saying about me, then at this point I say, okay, I reinforce what I know about myself, of who I am. I'm happy of who I am. I have no problem with it. It happened to me in one case and the other. And this is something that in this process was very important, because when we put ourselves in front of the other, and the other can be one person, can be a family member, can be at work, can be in a public, generalized public, could be through internet, many different contexts. The important thing is to understand why we are doing it, with which intention, and having our own ability to be honest with ourselves. This is very important. This honesty, where we're able to see when the ego is manifesting, when there is attachment, when there is aversion, or when there is love and honesty, or when there is the lack of honesty, when there is a mix of many different things. Because when we look at ourselves, on what is happening, one event inside of it, there is a richness. It's like a painting. If we look at this painting behind me of Lama Tsongkhapa, and I ask you, what is the color? Which color is this painting? It's blue, green, yellow, red, etc., etc. Many colors. So saying it's yellow means we are generalizing all the colors and putting it inside of yellow. Saying red, we're doing the same. The important things to say is, okay, the predominant color is yellow or orange, but actually looking, there is also red, blue, green, etc., etc. Okay, so similarly, when we are living different situations, okay, there is generosity, but there is a bit of attachment. There is love, but there is a bit of aversion. There's a sense of security, but there's also some fear. Trying to see these different shadows of what we have inside of us, and when we allow ourselves to see what we have inside, then this allows us to choose which one we want to abandon and which ones we want to follow and improve. Because when we try to not see what really is there, that thing will make itself heard. And this is something we have to observe. So sometimes observe and see what we are feeling, how we are living, what we are experiencing. Then there is this secret part, that are those things we live internally, that is, there's no need to make public, because it generally does not bring benefit to the other, or it's problematic for our own selves, for our own ego. But it's nice and a very good thing to see it. For example, we did this travel to Mongolia, and this travel, there were many beautiful things. Now I will take only a few of them. The first thing where the travel that was in this travel was this sense of trust. How can I say? Was a sense of when we learn to listen to our intuition, knowing the distinction between intuition and our own overthinking, that are two completely different things. How can you distinguish these two things? The intuition, we feel it in our stomach, in our chest. When we hear something in our head and then after goes back down, then that is something we should not listen. It's our overthinking. But when there is something that we feel, there's not this logical thought, and when we feel it, really feel it, is like it's in the right place. I don't really know how to say it, but it's something that in my experience, every time I followed it, worked. The time I did not follow it, not very much. Let's call it intuition, let's call it however we want, but when we know that there is something that know that is right. So in this travel I said, okay, maybe in Tibet was not the right moment, so we do a different travel. And Mongolia, okay, is right, good thing. And it started from this relationship of trust that was there, that was Geshe Kuncho Gyaltsen, a friend of Lama Gangchen, and myself. And it's a very nice thing to see that then when there is this trust, then things go their own way, they will be solved. During this organization, when I was in the tour, I was organizing the travel, and we were about to go to this trekking, and okay, I needed to substitute something in Mongolia, and I found this mountain, sacred mountain called Altai. I said, okay, let's go there. Okay, 40 people. How to do? Okay, let's find an agency. And it was very nice because we found this travel agency online, calling it without entering in too much detail and saying, okay, we sent 35,000 euro to someone I spoke only through WhatsApp. And trust. Just trust. At a certain point, I received the tickets, and it was a bit strange. And I put them in the AI, and it said, they don't seem true, don't trust them. But until the last moment, I said, okay, the possibility of arriving to the airport and the tickets not existing is there, but who will ever find this person in the extreme of Mongolia, near Russia? But actually, everything was correct. Everything went very well, and there was this trust. But this trust, in my case, feeling inside myself that this was the right thing to do. And this experience repeated itself in many different moments, because when you have trust, difficulties will solve themselves. There is a problem, we look at ourselves, we trust each other, that we want the best of the situation, and this thing will solve itself. And this is something that in our everyday life, starting from our work, starting from the family, most intimate relationships in the work, in something very normal, which not is so going to eat at the restaurant. What is the basis for all of this to work? Trust. I have trust that I ask this to the waiter and he will bring it to me. Is a relationship of trust. And what is important for us to observe is, or to be careful, is when I trust you, in the sense of I believe that we have a common objective, and that objective is respected amongst both parties, and there is this clarity. At this point, we can do everything together in this context, in that context. If at a certain point there is the lack of this trust, what happens is it starts creating small cracks of doubt. And this starts giving space to what in Tibetan is called sugmetigma, the shadows without form. We create shadows of things that don't exist. So we start creating doubts. Oh, but maybe you did this because of that. And when you start with this, with those small thoughts of doubt, of uncertainty, of untrustworthiness, create a huge vortex, and simple things become very complicated. Small problems become very big because there is not the basis anymore. I don't know if you ever had these similar experiences. I think yes. But what is important is that when these things happen, we don't have to enter in a process of becoming the victim, but understanding our inner process and being careful when there is a relationship that is where we find ourselves that we are in a good relationship. We have to be careful that these doubts don't enter because it's very subtle. We have to be careful that these small doubts and uncertainties enter inside of here, because then sometimes will pass, but when it's entered after some time passes, then it comes back. But when we have a true trust in a relationship, even if we have problems, even if we are not agreeing on same things, okay, it will happen, but solutions will be found. We will find solutions to keep harmony. And this is something that can be solved. But in order to solve these situations, there is another important aspect, that is our profound sincerity and honesty with ourselves. And I will explain. For example, it happened to me to be criticized. Not really criticized, how can I say, accused of something that personally I don't really agree. And this was a very interesting experience to me, having someone that points the finger to my face and accuse me of something very serious and trying to make that person see that that was not true. And for me, it was important to understand what was really happening. And what I realized is something that we do in general is we have a sensation, fear, attachment, aversion. We have our attachment of how something should go, and then it doesn't go in the way that we want to, etc. When we have an emotion, what we're searching is not the truth. What we really want is a narrative that justifies our own emotion. So the first time I heard this with these words was from a philosopher, a contemporary philosopher, that made an example that for me was absurd. It was during American elections, when there was, I don't remember which elections were there, but there were two candidates, maybe one Trump and one Biden, maybe before that. But anyways, this philosopher said, okay, there are some people that really believe a conspiracy theory that says both candidates, you cannot trust them because they are the same person, like extraterrestrial. is the same person that is changing faces and manifesting with different faces. Okay. Everybody is free to believe whatever they want. And he was saying, what does this show? That behind there is this emotion of lack of trust. Because you say either it's one or the other candidate, it's the same thing. And one is looking for a narrative to give coherency to that emotion that we're feeling. But what we do is that when we are feeling this sadness or joy or whatever, jealousy, envy, fear, whatever, our tendency is not to understand what is happening inside, but to try to look for the reason outside. Why am I feeling sad? Something must have happened in order to feel sad. Why am I angry? Something must have happened because I am angry. And when there are more strong emotions, we search a narrative to justify that is coherent in a way with that sentiment. When we find a narrative that is coherent, then we kind of relax. That narrative is coherent or not in itself, whether it is a folly, something that would not even be considered, or yes, it doesn't really matter. So in this case, personal case, this really helped to understand what was happening in the other person, where I was seeing that there was this strong attachment and incapacity of accepting, how can I say, let's say a lack of honesty with that person in itself, because, okay, I'm suffering because this was not as I expected, and so this is why I'm suffering. But the point is that here I have a different expectation of reality. But I don't want to say that I want to victimize myself, so someone needs to be... I need to find a narration to justify, let's say. We need someone who... When I find the person that is in the wrong, then I relax myself. I have a narration that is coherent, so I relax. This, when it's about small things, actually this for small things happen quite often. But it's very important to have a profound honesty, emotional, intellectual honesty with ourselves when we say, okay, I'm feeling bad because that thing is not as I want it to. That's it. I'm not feeling bad because that person is doing this and that person is doing that. I'm not feeling well because of the attachment I have to my image, not because of what that person said. Or no? Oh, but if that person didn't say it, I would have felt bad for something someone else would have said, because eventually... So, how can I say? Our process of observing what's happening inside of us, and to be honest, have this integrity and honesty, coherency of what is happening, what are our thoughts, why are we thinking this, why this is happening, and having the space in order to observe this, being careful not to... Because sometimes we create these narratives to justify ourselves, so we have to be careful to our own selves, not to enter and to be... And what is the problem? When we follow these narrations, we're not able to distinguish one thing from the other, and then it becomes too difficult to admit to ourselves we were wrong. Because we have... Yes, ignorance at the basis. But we have to admit the mistake, and it's wonderful. I remember this image that really impacted me. I came back from this travel. I don't remember from where. I arrived in Albagnano at home, and there was one person at home. And usually when you go back home from a long travel, first thing you do is go to the bathroom. So I go to the bathroom, I do what I needed to do, but I was not able to flush. The water was coming out, disaster. Okay, so it was a Saturday, because these things always happen during the weekend. Anyways, it was Saturday or Sunday, but gladly there was Vincenzo, a friend of mine that was working in the plumbing, and I called him, and he arrived with all his working tools, and inside of the bathroom there was this watermelon. And he looked at me and said, "Well, what did you do?" And I said, "Me? I just arrived from a travel. How could I do this?" And he said, "I found so many things in toilets, as in my job is never the fault of anybody, even if someone is living alone in their house." And I said, "Okay, let me try." And I went to the only person that was in my home at that time, and I asked, "Did you eat watermelon by any chance?" "No." "Someone maybe here eat watermelon?" "No." "But this happened." And the person said, "I don't know nothing about it. Maybe it just came out of nowhere." And unfortunately, I see that many times when there is a problem, usually it's never nobody's fault. And I have a different opinion. When we are in a fault, it's wonderful to be able to admit it without feeling bad about it, without feeling guilt, without putting ourselves down. Because the difficulty of admitting this error is usually connected to this expectation of not being able to make this mistake. We have to be perfect and already be arrived to the solution. But so when someone makes us see that we are in the wrong, our reaction is to put ourselves in defensive mode, saying, "No, it was not me, it was something else." Becoming the victim. If Adam and Eve did not do this, then we will find a reason in order to excuse ourselves. But when we openly admit our mistakes and we put ourselves in the position of wanting to be part of the solution, a big part of this tension will simply dissolve. It happened to me one time when I was in India. And honestly, I don't remember the specific context, what really happened. I completely forgot. But I said something to one of my teachers about another teacher that created a conflict between them. And at a certain point, I understood or realized what happened. And after a while, my teacher came to me very, very angry and said, "Look what you did between me and my master. You created a problem because of you." And when he arrived and he was so angry and he wanted to put his finger on me, I didn't even let him do that, because I admitted. I said, "Yes, it was my fault. I did this, I did that. I'm so sorry. What can I do to help?" And I remember the scene where, from this attitude where there was this attack from him towards me, he calmed down, he pacified and looked at me and said, "Look, at this point, the best thing you can do is just shut up. Let me solve it. Everything will be okay. Don't worry about it." And I said, "Okay, I'm really sorry of what happened. I'll learn from this mistake, from this teaching." And that's it, without even having to put myself in this attitude of guilt. Of course, I did a mistake. I did it on purpose. No, it was because of my ignorance. The important thing is not to repeat it. But when we admit the mistake, this is the starting point in order to learn and grow. If we don't admit our mistakes, we will stay in that position, that strong position, in order to keep the face and not lose it in some way, to keep this image, this idealized image in front of the other. And then this honesty will go away with ourselves. So this ability, when there are difficulties, when there are mistakes, to admit them, to look at them with honesty, for me is something very important. As it is important when there's a critic, being able to observe in a very honest way and see, okay, is there coherency or no? It happened sometimes to me that I recognized that what I was doing within my reality was okay. But my reality has to go with the reality of other people. And for the other person was not okay. So, I am sorry that I did something where you suffered. I will try to fix it where it's possible, and I will try to be more careful for the next time, because there's not only me. Because otherwise our tendency is, no, I did not do any mistakes. I did everything good. Yes, within your reality. But in the way that how I live the things in my reality, what you did for me made me suffer. So this we have to learn to adapt to one to the other, because there's not only us. So this process of having this inner honesty, with seeing things and recognizing what is happening, and being careful not to go creating narratives to justify our own emotions. We are made of these narrations, actually. Okay? I don't see the possibility of living life without narratives. We are made of stories to justify, to create realities. We are made of it, created by ourselves, by others, constantly. What is important from one side is that we can create and build and nurture narratives that help us feeling well with ourselves and with the others. And here there's another important point in these last months, in this inner biography that I want to share, is that a particular situation, without entering into details, who will try to understand will not understand, but I put myself in front of a choice that is between what is convenient and what is correct. And one of the things I saw with a lot of clarity for me is that not only in these moments where we live, but always, but even more in these moments, at the basis, we have to be solid and stable on principles and values that are healthy. Because if we start or keep giving priority to what is convenient economically, for my image, politically, as a society, in opposition to what is coherent, correct, healthy, to the values that I have, to what is the truth. It's like there is a song, a Brazilian song of Caetano Veloso saying, to say the truth when you can say a lie. So the thing is to be true even when it's not convenient. So I see that we are living in this moment where there are many values, even shared as a society, that were taken for granted. that for conveniency, for example, cooperation, to say one, human rights are going away. When I was in Mongolia, I was speaking to some people there and they were saying, yeah, we are a big country where population is basically horses. There are so many horses in Mongolia. People, not so much. Imagine the military in Mongolia with a very, very rich soil. From one side there is Russia, from the other there's China. And they said, the day that one or the other comes with military and say, you know what, this part of the country is mine, what can they do? What can Mongolia do? I don't really know. But for example, we had a certainty that one country will not invade another. And this, for example, from what is my understanding, is one of the certainties that brought this basis of trust, that brought to an increase of the military expenses, a decrease of military expenses. And this was wonderful, historically speaking. For years and years and years, there was much more expenses for the military rather than to health. We lost in part this certainty. And this brings fear, brings uncertainty. And so we start investing more in military, and you speak to people, and something that for me is obvious, which is the integrity of a country, is not really anymore. But this is just one example. As while we are losing values because it's more convenient here or convenient there, at the end of the day, at the short term is more convenient, but at long term it's really not, and will really hurt us. And this starts from an individual level. It's more convenient to say the truth or to lie. Maybe lie. At the short term, maybe yes, but long term, it's really, really bad for us. Is it more convenient to understand and finding a common ground, or going against each other? Probably at first going against each other is easier, but then will be worse. So ask ourselves, what are the values that for us are important? For me, for example, there is one value that is coherency with truth, so not lie. And for me, this is a starting point, fundamental. Not having fear of truth as I'm living it, and to be able to keep and stay in truth, not create parallel realities for this or that reason. And sometimes it's very difficult, because the choices that one makes, the coherence that one makes, are not maybe convenient for another. And I think it's fundamental for us to always keep not only the truth, but our principles, healthy principles. And here, and invite yourself to ask yourselves to say, what are your principles? What are the values that are at the basis? What are the red lines that we cannot cross? Because if sometimes when we don't verbalize these, it's like we give them for granted until it's uncomfortable. It's obvious that I will not lie. Yes, until it's convenient. It's obvious I will not kill until it's convenient. It's like in Tibetan Buddhism, one takes some vows: don't kill, don't rob, don't lie, don't have sexual intercourse in a bad conduct of don't take alcohol or drugs, what takes away the clarity of the mind. These are only just a few of the vows. Why someone takes a vow of not to kill? Because even if you say, of course I will not kill, yes, until you don't have a situation where it's more convenient to do. The same thing when you lie. I don't know if any of you ever lied. Ever not lied. If someone says, yes, this is already a lie. I think everybody once, at least once, lied. But why you take the vow? Because you protect yourself until it's more convenient to lie. So what are our values? Respect, love, gratitude, keeping peace and not going to violence. I don't want to make this precise list because it's something that is profound within each one of us, but it's very important for us to ask ourselves, what are our values to which we have to keep integrity? And once we have clarity of which are these values for us, then the integrity, it's about not creating narratives to justify that we are keeping this integrity when it's not true. I don't know if it's clear. Okay. And this is one of the most important things for me. And also, when you're able to follow it, gives joy and sustains inside of us. Okay, this thing can go in a bad way, it will be difficult, but there is this joy, there is something that sustains us when we can keep this inner coherency. And this really, I think, is one of the most important things that we have to try to follow, always. With a particular point. I found myself in a situation that I don't like. I always said that one thing that I don't like is when I find myself in front of someone that is a menace to me. If someone says, look, if you take this cup, this will happen to you. I will take the cup, even if I don't want it. Unfortunately, I have a bad. But if I find myself in front of a situation where there was seduction and this menacing, allowing myself to keep this coherency, keeping the truth, without entering in going in this opposition where I made the other an enemy. I don't know if it's clear. You threaten me. Now you are my enemy. My tendency is to critique you and making the others see how you are bad here, how you are bad there. So how can I keep these values of respect, of gratitude, of peace towards who is in opposition with me? This is a real test. And it's here that it's important, once again, to have this honesty where really you can do it. It's not so difficult in the end. It is possible. One of the mistakes that we do, I try to be short. Sometimes we believe that it is not possible to love someone that is acting in a way that we don't agree. We have a tendency of generalizing the person with the actions and situations, values, etc. So I have, let's say here, this cup of water, and this cup of water did something that for me is not correct. It treated people badly or threatened people, and it did these bad things towards me and someone near to me. So I really don't like what this cup did. My tendency is to create aversion towards this cup. So you, cup, are bad, etc., etc. So aversion. Question: why can't I love the cup? What do we mean by loving the cup? Why can't I desire that the cup is happy? Because he did all these bad things. How can you love the cup after he kept this bad liquid inside of itself, after he did this, after he did that? How can you love this cup? Because somewhere we have this strange idea that if I love you, then I agree with everything you did, etc., etc. And one thing is one thing, another thing is another thing. And it's not because I love you that I agree with what you do. I am ready to say I love you so much, but that thing sucks. And you cannot do that. And I oppose myself to that action. For example, it doesn't matter who acts in a way that is violent, based on hate, etc. For me, is wrong. It doesn't matter who that person is. Can be the person that I love most in the world. Because what we said many times here is it's important to base ourselves in the judgment of the actions, not of the person. The fact that the cup is not acting in a good way means that those actions are bad, and I will not say that those actions are good. I have no problem in this. And when I say that these actions are wrong, it doesn't mean that I'm saying that the cup is bad. I'm saying that the actions are not good. Because here, usually we have this problem. I'm talking bad about the action of the cup, and so someone says, so you're against the cup. No. I am against this, and that the cup is doing. And it's not, and on the other side I say, I love the cup, and so they say, so you agree with the actions of the cup. No. One thing is one thing, the other is another. One thing is not connected to the other, because if we base our emotion of love based on agreeing on what the other person does, I don't know, maybe 3 to half. How many people would we really be able to love? Then it becomes like that proverb saying in Italian, the garden of the neighbor is always greener. Tibetans added a part to this proverb saying, one's own kids are always right. Because then there is another topic. I love the cup. The cup did something that was not good, but he had a reason. So when we find ourselves in front of two people, one towards one person we have a lot of aversion and they're doing something good. What is our reaction? But you can't really trust it. It's not really like this. On the other hand, when we have a person that we really love that is doing something bad, but look, that person was not feeling very well, it's not really his fault. Okay? Instead, there is this philosophical proverb saying one thing is one thing, another thing is another thing. This is extremely profound to really, really understand that one thing is one thing and the other thing is another thing. And one does not take away from the other. The fact that I love you doesn't take away from the fact that you did something that is not good and that I don't agree with. But in order to do this, we really, really have to base to ourselves in the judgment of the actions and not the person. Because even when we think of ourselves, you ever found in yourself an incoherency? So what are you? You're here or there? Are you this or are you that? It's like looking at the painting and asking what is the color. We are many things. If I ask you, do you love your child? The tendency of answer would be, of course. You ever had aversion? You ever had the moment where that came out, this very bad part of you? Oh, so you don't love your child? No. I love my child, but when my child is acting this thing, in this way, I have aversion, and this is towards everybody. Sometimes someone say, no, Lama, with you would never happen. You are not really close to me. If we say together every day, 1 week, every moment together, then it's normal. Okay, we project ourselves on the other. One is the mirror of the other, so it's normal that many things come up. So when we look ourselves and we see that towards one person we can have aversion, attraction, jealousy, envy, gratitude, respect, admiration. You can have all of this, no? But what am I? Am I the admiration or am I the envy? I am a mixture of all of this with all the shades of this. Sometimes I feel this, sometimes I feel that. Our mind is like a wave of emotions and thoughts, of actions, interactions and choices. It's not one thing or the other. It's like talking of this with kids. The question is, what makes of a person a liar? What is the most easy answer? Lying, right? So how many times you have to lie in order to be a liar? I don't know, maybe one time. To me it comes to mind a person that for me is an example of a liar, because this person could not say a phrase without lying, and I'm not exaggerating. And this was a chronic thing. This was very complicated. But what determines that a person is a liar? Is it only by saying a lie one time? If this is the case, then we are all liars. And what about an honest person? How many times you have to say the truth to say an honest person? Always? So doesn't exist? We don't have honest people? The truth is that we don't exist people that are honest or liars. We have people that sometimes are honest, say honest things, and sometimes tell lies. These people can say more of one or the other, but what happens is at the end of the day, we are made of many different things. We cannot be one thing. We cannot generalize everything only on a part. It's like saying, even if the painting, like this, okay, it's green, but there is also a bit of blue. The fact that there is mainly the green, this does not take away the blue and the yellow that there is in this painting. So, to be able to see ourselves and say, we have different shades of many different things, and when we accept ourselves and see this in ourselves, we can see it also in the other. We have to start from how we judge ourselves in order to judge or know the other. And when I see that I have all these shades, and I try to judge my actions, and I don't have a problem saying this thing is wrong, and still I love myself, I have no problem in saying this also to the other. And I will and this does not mean that I don't love you if I say this to the other. And it's because I love you that I don't want you to keep doing an action to which I oppose myself. And if I have to oppose myself to an action with force, I will do it. If I really believe that that will help you without hate. Because one of the biggest problems is when we see an action that we not agree, and we generalize this on the person, and then we generalize on the ethnicity, and then we generalize on the political party, and this hate then will only get bigger and stronger. So this cup did something wrong, so this cup is bad, and so I take another cup and I say also that cup is bad. Why? Because it's a cup. So I cannot love cups anymore. So this is not only about general things, but it's also about our everyday interactions. And it's very nice when we are able to be in front of a situation where there is a difficult situation, there is a situation of threat, of anger, of injustice, and we are able to say, okay, this thing is not true, that action is not good, but I don't hold it against you. This lifts a huge and heavy weight, because when we generate this sensation of aversion and hate towards the other, we enter in this loop of trying to justify. So we have to find this narrative and have to reinforce it on explaining why I feel this hatred towards you. And sometimes the original reason doesn't even exist anymore, but the hate keeps going. And so I try to find other narratives to justify this emotion, like when two people start fighting, because one is saying that the cup should stay here and the other says no, it shouldn't stay here, and they start fighting because of this. At a certain point, one of the other says, okay, I changed my mind, and so also the other changes their mind, because after a while doesn't even matter what we're talking about. What it matters is being in the right and you being in the wrong, and I don't want to find a common point, because there is this sensation inside of me that doesn't allow me to find a common ground. So I will try to find every narrative to justify that version and that hate and that sadness, etc., etc. And this, if we look, I really believe that majority of us, we have similar experiences. In order to pacify this and tackle this, one of the first things we have in some way, we bring clarity to this mechanism, reveal this. When we are able to see this mechanism where we put ourselves in and how much it's fake and, how can I say, how illusory it is and how bad it is in the end to us, this will already start fading. It will not solve it, but it will start fading. So I recognize, okay, we were working quite well together, but then something happened that I really didn't like, and I generalized this towards you, and this generated this aversion. Then this situation maybe ended, but the aversion stays, and then I created many things to justify this aversion. I still have it, but this is not good for me. Already the fact saying this is not good for me, I don't want to stay in this, already is a first step. The step of seeing this dynamic already is helping us to go out of this position of victimizing ourselves. Because one of the main things is when we have hatred and aversion, when I'm feeling this, I'm feeling as a victim of my object of hatred. I hate the cup. I don't want to have hate. Who is the fault because I'm feeling hate of the cup? So when we are able, as first thing, not to victimize ourselves and say, okay, I don't feel hate or anger because of the cup, but because I'm not able to distinguish the action with the person, I stayed trapped in this emotion and I found these narratives to stay in this. I became trapped in this. I'm nor the victim nor the executioner. I have to understand I have this feeling that is not good for me, not good for the other, and I have to realize I want to be free from it. And this only depends from me. It's like saying, if I ask for your forgiveness for something that I did that I feel guilty of, whether you forgive me or not is your problem. My job is to ask for your forgiveness, is to admit that that action was not good, recognizing that what I did was not good, and not wanting to repeat it. If you see it or no, recognize or no, you accept, you forgive or no, depends on you, does not depend on me. And I cannot wait. I don't have to wait for you to do something in order for me to change my habits and my actions. So I recognize this version hurts me. Why do I have this aversion? Where does it come from? Sometimes we find the reason, sometimes no. So when this does not happen, the first thing we have to do is not to nurture it. So we have to stop justifying it. For example, we can make thousands of examples. It happened to me some time ago to be in a situation where there was a context of a person that usually acts in a way that I don't really like regarding a specific thing. And in the midst of all of this, it happened to me to receive a document that I had to read it, and I realized that I had a preconcept towards that document. And I already started reading it with a bad way because it came from that person. And it was a very nice experience because I started reading it in a bad way. Then I breathed a bit and I said, it's actually good. It's the opposite of what I expected. This person is right. And the beauty is to observe within us this dynamic that was making me see this in a bad way. And to see how when there is this, we see everything towards that lens. So, in a few words, just trying to summarize, recognizing our own processes and then the phases to work on this version are: first level, very high aversion. If I have the lot of aversion towards the cup, is not to say close to the cup. Okay? Not giving the blame to the cup, but having this awareness that I don't have the ability to not react in a bad way in front of the cup. And I don't want to, because until I feel this thing inside, it's one thing. When this thing becomes an action, whether it's by speech or by physical action, is another. So I am aware that I'm not able to act in a good way with the cup. So I keep a distance. Security distance, more possible. There is a danger when someone does this and remains in this, so thinks that this is the solution. It's like the movie that I saw one time. I think it's one of the worst movies I've ever saw, called Samsara. And it's a story of this monk starting this retreat in this But there are many different bad things happening. There is this retreat of the monk that he does for 3 years, and when he comes out, it's like he's drugged. But when someone actually meditates for this long, you have a lot of clarity. And when he exits this cave of retreat, the first woman he sees, he throws himself on this woman in the worst way possible. He leaves monk life and becomes the worst husband ever. And when when it's finished the movie, I think maybe he also kills her. No, maybe I'm mixing two movies, but they're both bad movies. The other bad movies where the protagonist kills the wife is winter, summer. Anyways, it's a very bad movie. At a certain point, he lives the life of the monk, and he marries this woman. He becomes a very bad husband, and at the end, he leaves the family because it's too difficult. So he comes back to being a monk in order not to have the life of normal life, and he says, "I'm renouncing samsara." They really did not understand a thing, so it's a very bad message they're sending. But this is an example of, if I'm in front of an object of aversion or desire, and what I do is trying to keep away because I don't want to feel that, but I'm not working internally for it. When I find myself again in front of that object, either I take it with all force or I try to expel it with all force, depending if it's an object of desire or aversion. But if we are at this first level and we have this high level of desire, we have to keep distance. For example, if we cannot eat chocolate, I have to keep a distance. I cannot go every day to a chocolate factory. So I try to put some distance to the object of desire, but in this process of understanding that the problem is not the chocolate, is that I'm not able to stay in front of the chocolate having a good behavior. So first level is to keep distance. Second level, it's made of 3 parts. That is, I see that there is anger coming up. I find myself in front of the object. I see that anger is coming up. I recognize anger. And I generate awareness. Seeing what's happening inside of me. Recognizing this aversion. Recognizing this anger and hatred. And I still am not able to do anything differently. I see anger, but I'm not able to stop myself from acting accordingly. But I have awareness. The more I have awareness, the more I can go to the second step, where I have awareness of this emotion that is almost coming up before it takes complete hand of me. So at that point, I have an attitude of having a detachment from myself, where I see this anger. I will not follow it, and I do not block it. If I try to block it, saying I do not have to be angry, this will get over me. But at the same time, as I follow it, becomes more strong. What it means to nurture anger. To act physically, verbally, or mentally through anger. So this emotion comes up and I react towards this. So in this way, this emotion becomes more strong. If I talk through anger, I make it become more strong. So in this point, we have 3 levels. The first one, I see anger, I do not react physically, then I do not react verbally. And the third level, I do not enter in an inner dialogue. I should not get angry, but if that person didn't do that, then blah, blah, blah. And so we enter in this inner dialogue. when we are able to see an emotion coming up and recognizing as something sort of a habit that we bring with ourselves, something like a memory, something that I'm used to reacting this way, and I see this, then I keep a bit of a distance to myself, I allow it to come up, and I just wait for it to go away, because fortunately it will go away. And when it goes away, I do not have to justify it, or I do not have to feel guilty about it. It's a habit that I do not want to have again. The third level is to give continuity to the second level, because what happens is you are able for a while to do this, but after a while you fall again. But we need to give continuity. Then, after this, is to generate the antidote. To generate the antidote means I have aversion towards you. I try to generate sympathy, love, compassion. How to do this? Let's make an example. Practical. I was listening some time ago to this psychiatrist talking about things connected to neuroscience, etc. Her name is Marian Rojas, Spanish. She's very good. And she was talking about her father, also a psychiatrist. And she was saying her father had this technique that when people arrived in pairs to do couples therapy, the first thing he did is to ask, how did you meet? And what happens is, technically speaking, when we share and we say something nice, our body reacts as if we were living what we're saying. So chemically, the oxytocin goes up and it changes. So if I need to look in your eyes and find a common ground, then first I need to feel something good. So when the couple, I don't think that when someone goes to couple therapy, I don't think it's because things are going well. It wouldn't be a bad idea. Do we want to continue being in a good relationship? This is why we came to therapy. Could be interesting, but usually is not this the reason. Usually is when something is going badly, then we go to therapy. So we have these two people. They already have this conflict. So how can we give them a common ground to start dialoguing and having a common point? So we start with remembering a positive thing and a good moment, because when two people meet, probably was a good moment, not necessarily for everybody, but in general, we hope that it's like this. And on this basis, slowly it creates this. So chemically we change, and this oxytocin that becomes higher allow us to generate more empathy towards the other. So if there is a person that is part of my life with which towards which I have some aversion in some moment of my life, and I want to have a good relationship with this person, apart from doing this job of recognizing, keeping distance, recognizing what I'm living, trying not to block and not to nurture, etc., I try to find common grounds. Because if we are not agreeing on something, either we make it as nothing happened, or we start talking about this until we find the exact point and we clarify. Usually this is very difficult, because usually when one person is ready to speak, the other is not anymore, and vice versa, etc., etc. And the other possibility is, let's find a common point where we are both staying well and we can share something nice, and on this basis we create a safe space to heal those problems. The bad thing to do is to create that safe space and pretend that we don't have the conflict. I don't know if it's clear. Someone would say, yeah, but it's difficult. Yeah. But to stay in this aversion and hatred is even more difficult. There is no easy answer and solution. But this makes us go back to the starting point, to keep our healthy principles and values of respect, of love, of gratitude, of honesty, coherency. This for me is fundamental. Okay? So this is, it's interesting because what we're doing today, I'm sharing with you what happened in these last months without saying nothing, but saying everything at the same time. There is another experience, inner experience, that I shared with some people, that is allowing to be less attached to time. When we were in Mongolia, we were sitting in the bus. Usually when we start to travel, first question is, when are we arriving? How much time to get there? We all have our GPS, even in Mongolia, people looking, seeing, yes, it's 3 hours. And then you ask for the people, and they say, the local people, and they start laughing and say, maybe 6 hours, and then it's like 14. And at a certain point, the beauty is to see these 80 people that really didn't care anymore about what time we would arrive, because then you start relaxing, and it's not really important when you arrive, but how you are living it while you're going there. And it was very clear how we are very, very much slaves of time. And we have this strange idea that the quicker we do things and more we have control over time, the more we can live, the more things we can do. Do we have this idea that faster is better because this way we have more time for other things? But it's not really true, because when we finish one thing, we are running on the next thing, and we are not able to be really present and relaxed in the moment. And this experience to just be, look at the environment, and just forgetting about the existence of the clock. This is an incredible experience. Obviously, there are many times in our daily life where this is not possible because we have appointments and everything, but there are other moments in our life when this is actually possible, but we don't really do it. And there is an interesting thing, that when we try to have control on something, we create an expectation. It will last 2 hours. It will happen like this. I will find this place. This will be like this. That will be like that. We try to have an idea on how things should go, and we create small expectations for each and every thing. And when things are not going as we expected, we see this as a menace, as a threat, because it takes away our security, our certainty. And what is this reaction what is our reaction towards a threat? Is stress. Towards uncertainty, we live uncertainty like a threat. In the face of threat, we have more stress, and the cortisol is going up, and we become more tense. The more we have expectations, the possibility of things not going as we expect is very high. And while we are not arriving there, there is the expectation of what will happen, what will not happen, and we will have this fear of what will happen. And there is all of this happening. And every decision, every time we have to take a decision, there is stress. Because the decision inevitably puts us in front of an uncertainty and threat. But what will I do, this or that? What is better? There are some studies that say that in the modern world, on average, we take like 35,000 decisions. Seems a lot. I should send or not send a message? What will I write? What will I put on? What will I eat? It's a lot of micro decisions that we take that it doesn't really matter if the decision is about something important, like which job to choose among the three, or what will I eat. The decision creates stress. What creates a higher level of stress is the longer time we stay in this period of uncertainty, the longer we will experience stress. When we choose something, for example, I put a blue or red dress, until I take the decision of putting on this dress, there will be stress. And another thing I saw in this travel is the beauty of not taking decisions. Where we go? Where we are going. When will we arrive? When we will arrive. What we will eat? What we will have. When will we eat? Where will we sleep? Without expectations, because before the travel I did a bit of terrorism, because I said, the food will be shit, and where we will sleep, this and that. So if we have low expectations, being in a context where you don't have to take decisions creates this enormous mental space. And one of the important things is to take decisions, and to be in charge of taking decisions actually consumes life. So we have just a limited quantity of energy in our life, and it's up to us to where we put this energy. And when we consume this energy with futile informations, with decisions that are not so important, one after the other, with stress, life consumes itself, and we don't have space for many other important things. So to diminish the level of decisions that are not so important, it's important to simplify life. This really, really helps. And reduce expectations. And for this, I conclude with something that is an anecdote that during the travel I wanted to say, but didn't really have the occasion. Our mind determines greatly the experience that we have of our life. As we said, we experience life through the narrations that we say to ourselves. And this is not only for humans. And one of the most powerful things is comparisons. Because, for example, this is big or small. It depends on what you compare it to. This study that was made, called the fairness test, in the 80s, something like this. There is a video on internet of this fairness test. There is There is this cage with two monkeys, and they have these pebbles. And every time these monkeys put the pebbles from one side to the other of the cage, they receive a cucumber. And they repeat this exercise for 30, 40 times. And both monkeys all the times are very happy to bring back the pebbles and take the cucumber. At a certain point, following this same process, they repeat it, and to one they give a cucumber, and to the other they give they give the cucumber, to the other they give the grape. So when this other monkey sees that, she brings back the pebble, and when she receives again the cucumber, she gets so mad. To the other monkey, the researcher keeps giving a grape, and the other monkey gets so pissed, gets the pebble and starts throwing it in the cage, and gets the cucumber, doesn't eat it, and just throws it away. And they tried this experiment with many other animals, also with humans, and the answer is always the same. We base ourselves on comparisons. And this is a huge ripoff, because the cucumber is actually good and we cannot always have the grape. And instead of being happy of my cucumber, I start seeing the one with the grape, I will never give value to the cucumber again, and I will suffer. What happens with social media? This is what happens also with marketing, publicity, advertising, with many different things. There was one moment where in the travel where this happened, that created this small tension, but it went away. The great most part of the travel we slept in places that were okay, but one time we slept in once we slept in a place where we slept so well. And in these tents, the yurta had bathrooms, and the other half did not have the bathrooms. And people started saying, even if where I sleep today is better than where we slept the day before, why I don't have the bathroom inside and the other has it? Okay. And here it starts. Fortunately, nothing happened in the travel, but internally, these are dynamics that in our daily life are very present. So it depends on our own narrative. Do I have a lot, or do I have not enough? The value that I attribute, it depends on a comparison. The time that you give to me is enough or not enough. It depends on what you compare it to. Someone would say, Lama, you don't spend a lot of time in Milan. Yeah, well, go speak to someone from Brazil. What happens is, somehow we have to be more smart to be happier. Okay, but someone would say, now you're trying to manipulate reality. But actually, we constantly manipulate reality, every one of us. We always try to create new narratives. So we have to try to live in a way where we feel more harmoniously and stable. This is the most important thing. And this also is in regards to the relations we have to the others. You did this, but it's not enough because the other time you said you did this, so I think you should have done that. So let's remember not to stay there to compare ourselves with others. Everybody has their own context and situation. So let's try to see what we have for what we have without necessarily having to compare it to something else. Because then this will hurt us. Okay? So the conclusion for today is that every one of us live situations. As we said before, we have external situation and inner situation. And while we live, we experience a narrative story. And within this narrative, we create justifications and projections. And someone would say, okay, but creating a different narrative would be fake. But even the one that we already tell ourselves is fake. Not fake in the sense of that is all an illusion, but in the sense that is our own narrative. If we want to see if it's correct or no, it depends on if the parts that are part of this narrative can sustain the functions that we give. I don't want to enter in details of this argument in this topic, otherwise we start entering in the topic of the correct view of reality. But the point is, we live inside of this narrative, and this narrative depends greatly on how we speak to ourselves, to others. So if we are able to tell with coherency and honestly a nice version, then this becomes our life. It's the same thing as saying if the cup is half empty or half full. There are many examples, but we can have this positive narration. This doesn't mean we have to neglect the problems that they do exist. The point is there is no problem in judging or opposing ourselves to certain actions that go against our own principles and values. But we don't judge people, we judge situations, actions, choices. And at the same time, we try to remember of the positive things and write them down, telling them. Because if we don't verbalize them, we will forget them. And this is one of the problems of the modern day, because we are bombarded by many informations that we are not able to remember the good things that happen to us. But it depends on us. The other day I was with a kid, and at a certain point the parents excused the kid, saying, at this age people repeat things, and is in the phase where he wanted me to repeat that story more times. It was a story of the bus that got stuck in the road in Mongolia, and I had to repeat that story like 20 times. But I was thinking, what a wonderful thing, because what we're doing, we are fixing this story in memories, and we fix it. And this is what we do speaking with people. And many times we create a narrative that the more we tell, the more we believe in it. And sometimes we know if it's not really right, but the point is not really that, but how it's working within us. What is generating in us? Is it generating aversion or gratitude? Or it's not really important if this narration is 100% coherent with what happened, but it's more important on how this narration transforms me. If it generated in me more aversion, it's bad. If it make me a person with more gratitude, then it's wonderful. But we have to remember that this is something we can do in an active way, not passive. We don't have to be passive with our memories. We are constantly building our own narration, and this is what we pass on to the others. So, an example before concluding is we find ourselves in moments where we have some challenges. For example, I explained a personal situation where I had to choose among something that was easy or something that was coherent with my values. And I say to myself, wow, I'm very grateful. I'm fortunate to be able to follow my values and keep the truth. This is wonderful. This is an example of one thing. But when I go repeat this, I will not repeat this narrative where I say, why they put me in this situation, if they did this, if I did that, I could have had this, I could have had that. Sometimes we look for this because we like this. We sometimes want a horse that is also an elephant, but doesn't exist. But we have to be grateful and be happy that we have a horse and we have an elephant. And we don't have to be there crying, saying why this animal is not half one and half the other. So let's build our own version, our own narration with an attitude of profound honesty with ourselves. And on this point, this honesty is something we have to get used to because it's not for granted that we have it right away and that we're able to apply it. We have to slowly learn, because there is a moment where we still believe we can and this is a training, wonderful training we have to do with ourselves. So let's do our dedication now.
Nime kuyan delek shin nilsen takto delek pe kuncho sumke chingelo kuncho sumke ngodrubatsol kuncho sumke trashishu. All'alba o al tramonto, di notte o durante il giorno, i tre gioielli concederci le loro benedizioni. Possono aiutarci ad ottenere tutte le realizzazioni e cospargere il sentiero della nostra vita con molti segni di buon auspicio. Grazie a tutti e ci vediamo mercoledì prossimo. Okay? E questo sabato ad Albagnano ci saranno anche insegnamenti. Introduzione al buddismo. Questo sabato ad Albagnano.